Hello, my name is Tatiana. I am part of Palestine Vivra and the March to Ottawa. I want to begin with a brief note about the upcoming Palestinian recognition announcement by the Canadian government. On Tuesday, Mr. Carney told the media that at the next United Nations Assembly, Canada would recognize the Palestinian state. What might be at first glance seems like a historic gesture, in reality hides something far more serious: blackmail against the Palestinian people. It is a conditional recognition, demanding in exchange of renunciation of their inalienable right to self-determination. This recognition is stillborn. It does not seek to support the Palestinian people, but rather to guarantee Israel's interests, cutting off the Palestinians' ability to freely choose their legitimate representatives. Far from representing progress, it reflects the colonial mentality that continues to operate in our country and which is utterly unacceptable. Those who have been in Parliament Hill in recent days know this. We have already read about thousands of names of children murdered in Gaza by Israel. We repeatedly invited members of Parliament to join this act of memory and dignity. Not surprise, but the response has been cold indifference. It is not surprise because Canada continues to trade with Israel and maintains its alliance with a criminal state. Yet it is painful to note that only a handful of elected representatives were moved to take part, while the vast majority completely ignored us. From this comes the idea of the wall of shame, where the faces of those representatives will be inscribed as infamous accomplices to the massacres of thousands of innocent lives in Gaza. Politics is not just management, it is ethics and convictions. And when our representatives lack humanity, they make undesirable those who do show it. As citizens, we see how campaigns against genocide driven by respected organizations fall on deaf ears, how our leaders avoid confronting the shameful reality of their times, and we feel the impotence of being the ones who must act. That is why we are here today, calling for peaceful civil disobedience and breaking away from a government that not only does not represent us, but deeply offends us with its lack of ethics, courage, and mostly humanity. We said last Tuesday in this very place, the new world order in which Canada inscribes itself opens two paths. One, Trump's with restrictions of freedom, violence, and war. The other, Pedro Sanchez, with peace, human rights, and coherence. Carney wants to stand in both spaces, but that is impossible. We are the society that not only speaks for human rights, but also exercises and defends them. We will not ask permission to do so. In these days at Parliament Hill, people from different corners of Canada have witnessed the circus you live in. Allowing yourself to ignore ordinary people who have decided to take a step forward. We came to Ottawa to confront you and to make you request that for us, this is just common sense. Do something to save the life of human beings who are being killed in Gaza day after day. Your silence towards our demands only reaffirms our commitment to continue organizing that. So, one way or another, you will have to listen to us. From Palestine Vivra, we call on citizens to organize in peaceful disobedience. Our ports and airports cannot continue feeding the slaughter of Gaza and supporting an ethno-state imposed on the indigenous people of that land. We also call on Canadian unions to take a stand and act decisively within the spheres of influence so that the oxygen the Canadian government gives to Israel is cut off wherever workers have the power. Because acting now is an act of legitimate defense. And finally, we summon all citizens to join us tomorrow, Friday at 6 p.m., for a great march starting at the Canadian Museum of History in Gatineau and concluding in Parliament Hill, where we'll be closing our week of action in the capital region. Add to that, I would like to express how the urgency of doing it, because while we were coming here after 3 days of being peaceful on Parliament Hill, obeying to the laws, the oppression is non-stopping. What we witness here is just a bare minimum of what Palestinians have to endure day after day on Palestine, on the West Bank, and especially on Gaza. This is absurd. On the way here to this press conference, one of our colleagues had to empty all of his belongings in the table because the message that was being said on her bag was not okay. But the agent was not even able. Why not? Because apparently anti-Zionism is a bad word here. How come anti-oppression is a bad word in Canada? We have a double standard according to who the victims are.
Hello, bonjour. My name is Kelsey Lyseng. I'm a registered nurse from Edmonton, Alberta. I'm not a veteran, a politician, or anyone special. I'm just a Canadian citizen who was curious enough to gain some understanding of basic Palestinian history and still human enough to empathize past the color of my own skin. Being asked to speak today about healthcare in Gaza felt daunting. I have this sense of, like, what else could we possibly say? Haven't we said it all already? All the international humanitarian organizations stand unequivocally against this. UN, WHO, ICC, Amnesty International, Doctors Without Borders, Red Cross, like the list goes on. And we've been having these press conferences like this for 2 years now. We've had doctors come back from Gaza and they describe harrowing stories of bullets being found in children's heads and chests, deliberate acts of murder, a war crime. We've had people like Gabor Mate, Holocaust survivor, speak about this all the time, how bad this is. Francesca Albanese, UN Special Rapporteur for the occupied Palestinian territories. All these people who we typically look up to for guidance on right and wrong, international human rights, they all stand unequivocally against this genocide. And the Canadian government has effectively done nothing. Just Tuesday, the UN Commission of Inquiry on the occupied Palestinian territory and Israel concluded that Israel is committing genocide. Not plausible genocide, not possible genocide, is committing genocide. So now, after 2 years of trusted experts explicitly denouncing this destruction of life, I'm supposed to talk to you about the healthcare in Gaza. Effectively, there is no healthcare in Gaza. It's no longer how many hospitals have been bombed. They've all been bombed. There's no functioning hospital in Gaza. It's no longer videos of kids crying. It's videos of kids dead in pools of other people's blood. 1,581 healthcare workers have been murdered since October 7th, 2023. Those that survive, like Dr. Ala al-Najjar, have 9 out of 10 of their kids murdered. Tens of thousands more amputees, if we can operate on them because we don't have anesthesia, because the medicine and supplies are being held at the border. Water sanitation has been destroyed and there's no waste management because people are just trying to survive, so polio has reemerged in a place where it has been eradicated for 25 years. New acronyms have come up. WCNSF, Wounded Child No Surviving Family, because it was just so common for emergency doctors to see this. And anyone who survives these physical traumas have mental trauma, the likes most of us could never even begin to imagine. I mean, can you imagine watching your son take his last breath because you can't pull him out under the rubble? Nurses and doctors want to heal, but we cannot heal people who are dead. We cannot work in hospitals that don't exist, and we cannot medicate without medicine. We can look at this as over there. I've heard this concept a lot of only caring about things that are on our own soil, as if borders weren't man-made and as if we have no responsibility to our fellow humans, but sure, say this is over there. Canada has no part in it. A bunch of bad people are doing bad things over there, right? Canada is innocent. Wrong. Arms Embargo Now report exposes the Canadian government's provision of arms being used to cause a genocide. 47 direct military shipments to Israeli arms companies from October 2023 to July 2025. 421,070 bullets exported to Israel since the Gaza assault began, including one shipment in just April 2025 of 175,000 bullets. 100 international flights transporting Canadian components to Israel, 65 of them commercial passenger flights. Canada claims we're peacekeepers. You know, we've signed the Geneva Conventions, the Genocide Convention, UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, the Arms Trades Treaty, all these agreements that obligate that we stop supplying arms to states that are committing crimes against humanity. But the data shows that our government is still providing arms to Israel, and those arms are being used to kill civilians in Palestine. It is time for our government to live up to its principles, end the arms exports, halt trade with Israel, support access to essential humanitarian and medical aid, and advocate for the freedom of Palestinians. Maybe then healthcare workers in Palestine can actually do their jobs, and maybe then the genocide can end to allow Palestine to even begin to heal on their own terms with their own sovereignty. Free Palestine.
Bonjour, mon nom est Nimâ Machouf, je suis épidémiologiste et je pars pour la deuxième fois pour rejoindre la flottille de Liberté pour Gaza. La flottille Soumoud est en direction de Gaza pour acheminer de l'aide humanitaire à la population palestinienne. La flottille est composée de plus de 30 bateaux regroupant plus de 1000 activistes de 50 pays différents. Plusieurs autres bateaux partiront la semaine prochaine. Je m'envole demain pour me joindre à cette flottille qui a été baptisée Thousands Madleens. On ne baissera pas les bras, la devise est claire. Vous nous en empêchez un, on va vous en envoyer 1000. Thousands Madleens. Notre convoi s'inscrit dans ce même effort, briser le blocus et acheminer de l'aide humanitaire et du matériel médical à Gaza, où un génocide est en cours depuis 2 ans. N'ayons pas peur des mots. La commission d'enquête internationale mandatée par l'ONU confirme d'ailleurs ce que la société civile et ce que Amnesty International dénonce depuis des mois. Ce qui se passe à Gaza est bien un génocide. Depuis bientôt 2 ans, nous sommes témoins en direct des atrocités commises par Israël, des images des bombardements de civils, des bombardements d'hôpitaux, des blocages de vivres nous parviennent tous les jours et malgré tout, nos dirigeants ne font rien. Nous sommes témoins d'une tentative d'extermination du peuple palestinien. Nous sommes témoins d'une famine orchestrée de toutes pièces à Gaza par l'État d'Israël. Si ce n'est pas du terrorisme, dites-moi ce que c'est. Il est urgent d'agir pour arrêter Israël, pour mettre fin au massacre en cours, ce qui veut dire 1. Briser le blocus auquel est soumis Gaza. 2. Arrêter de vendre des armes à Israël, directement ou indirectement, peu importe. L'important, c'est que les armes fabriquées au Canada ne doivent pas aller tuer les Palestiniens et Palestiniennes et ne doivent pas être utilisées pour le génocide. 3. Imposer des sanctions économiques à Israël. N'oublions pas que la seule fois où Israël s'est assis sérieusement à la table des négociations, c'était à l'époque des accords d'Oslo, et c'était parce que l'Union européenne avait rompu son accord commercial avec Israël, ce qui les a forcés de s'asseoir à la table de négociation. Il faut qu'on retourne à imposer des sanctions économiques à Israël pour les forcer à négocier. Et quatrièmement, appliquer les mandats d'arrêt émis par la Cour pénale internationale contre Netanyahou et Yoav Gallant, celui qui a été ministre de la Défense jusqu'en novembre 2024. Si nous continuons à prendre la mer pour tenter de briser le blocus, c'est que nos gouvernements ont failli à leurs responsabilités. Et par leur inaction, ils se rendent complices des crimes commis par Israël. Bien sûr, notre mission est dangereuse, pas par sa nature, mais par l'État d'Israël qui tente par tous les moyens d'empêcher l'acheminement d'aide humanitaire à Gaza. Mais on ne peut pas rester les bras croisés. On est tous responsables de ce qui se passe à Gaza actuellement. Les sabotages d'Israël ne nous arrêteront pas. notre détermination reste intacte. Je parle de sabotage parce que la flottille de l'année passée, ou toutes ceux et celles qui ont tenté de se rendre à Gaza auparavant, donc je parle de cette flottille. Je parle aussi de la flottille du Madeleine qui a été incendiée par Israël aux abords de l'île de Malte. Je parle aussi du Handala qui a été kidnappé dans les eaux internationales à peine 8 heures de Gaza. Et plus récemment, des attaques de drones sur les 2 bateaux espagnols qui étaient en Tunisie les 8 et 9 septembre derniers. Et on compte sur nos médias et nos communautés pour couvrir notre mission parce que parler de la flottille aide à assurer notre sécurité, mais parler de la flottille aide surtout à faire pression sur nos gouvernements pour forcer Israël à mettre un terme au blocus de Gaza et à respecter les lois internationales, c'est-à-dire sur la raison d'être de la flottille. Merci.
I want to speak very briefly about the vigil that we are holding outside on the west lawn of Parliament Hill, vigil to read the names of the children murdered in Gaza. This initiative was launched in the UK several months ago. We picked up the torch in Montreal in August with a list of 14,000 names, what you see here. Our second reading contained 17,000 names. We are currently reading the names of 20,495 children who have been murdered by Israel in Gaza. And that list is sorely incomplete because these were just the children that were documented to have been murdered by the health registry. This does not contain the children who are still hidden under the rubble, who cannot be identified because they have no surviving family. We now know that that number has been increased to 680,000 people killed in Gaza, over half of which are children under the age of 5. I brought this list here today because it's very heavy, and the vigil outside has been shamefully poorly attended by members of parliament and by mainstream media who have not bothered to show up, not even to pay tribute, let alone read. And for 2 days, we had a podium like this one to be able to read from, so that the people who bore the burden of reading the names were able to pose the book on something. And now, on day 3, we've been told that we can't even have a little podium with a stand, so we have to hold it. Not only emotionally bearing the burden, but physically as well. This is shameful. I'm ashamed of this government for its complicity in the genocide. Free Palestine.
Hi there. I was wondering about the comments that we saw yesterday from Anita Anand, our foreign minister, about recognition and normalization. She said that what's happening at the UN is, she didn't use the word symbolic, but that it's a recognition of an eventual Palestinian state, but that the actual elevation of the envoy to a full ambassador and the delegation into a full embassy, that normalization is actually what's conditional here. I'm wondering if that aligns with what the government had been telling the public. You know, they'd outlined these conditions, and what you make of that sort of comment coming from the foreign minister.
I mean, with all due respect, they're good at their words, but the actions where they fall. And as I run into my own member of parliament on the Liberal Party too, I mean, with our cameras, you can say the truth. And then the thing is, politics before life. That's the thing. So I understand the approach, but at the same time, I ask, will that stop the 24, 28 children that will be killed today, that will be killed tomorrow? Like, how long would we wait for that? Because then that will not stop also either what's happening to Gaza, where will they go even if they stay. So by the time this bureaucratic machine moves along, will there be people with the rhythm we're going? So me personally and us on the street, we feel like it's more a little pat on their back for themselves, but is it really anything changing? And there's things they can do here in the government. Okay, maybe they don't have the ability to stop Israel, but we can do things here by giving them the arms, but we could also stop the companies that are raising charity funds in Canada to send Canadians to fight and become war criminals for the Israeli government. We should also be investigating all the Canadians that return from committing those war crimes here, because that is actually a threat for our own security here. So there's a lot of other things they can do, but they keep saying, let's wait, you'll see. But like Mr. Carney himself said a while ago at the beginning of the summer that if this keep on going, they will impose the sanction, and nothing has happened. Like the limit is always being pushed. So that's what I mentioned, like, we understand there's bigger players at the table than us, but in what we have the ability, our government is not doing it. And we know the ability because we saw it with the Ukrainian crisis and we saw it with other situations. So there's the clear double standard.
Et j'ajouterais que le Canada a joué un rôle dans la paix dans le monde jadis. À l'époque, M. Mulroney, même contre l'Afrique du Sud et l'apartheid en Afrique du Sud, a pris une position de leader, a exercé son leadership pour qu'on puisse mondialement combattre l'apartheid en Afrique du Sud. Donc, un pays comme le Canada qui a un passé de peacekeeper, qui avait dans le temps été reconnu pour ses casques bleus et son action dans le domaine de la paix, on serait capable à retourner là. Mais comme ma collègue l'a mentionné, ce que nos gouvernements actuellement disent, c'est très peu et très tard. L'année passée, quand la flottille à laquelle j'ai tenté de participer et qui partait d'Istanbul a été sabotée par Israël et la flottille n'a pas pu quitter le port d'Istanbul, on est venu ici et on a discuté avec Madame Joly, à l'époque, la ministre des Affaires étrangères. Elle nous a dit que le Canada bientôt allait reconnaître la Palestine, mais ce n'était pas encore le temps. Ils n'étaient pas encore prêts. Alors, 1 an plus tard, probablement que le gouvernement actuel a décidé de reconnaître peut-être la Palestine avec des conditions absolument irresponsables. Peut-être parce que d'autres pays européens ont osé le faire, parce qu'ils allaient se faire devancer par l'Espagne, par l'Italie, par la France. C'est bien de toute façon d'avoir dit qu'ils allaient mettre le pas de l'avant, mais les conditions qu'ils ont imposées sont vraiment irresponsables. Mais c'est quand même un premier pas. Il faut reconnaître la Palestine avant de pouvoir aller plus loin sur la guerre qui nous sépare de cette région du monde. Merci.
Si je peux ajouter au-delà, est-ce une déception que disent le ministre Anand qu'il y a toujours cet écart entre la normalisation et the recognition and the normalization sort of gap? I mean, maybe this was not a surprise, right? There were these conditions, but still, I'm wondering how you feel about the government drawing that distinction, saying, you know, actually what we're doing next week, it's not the full-fledged, it's a recognition, but it's not a normalization.
Ouais. Donc, les pays européens qui osent reconnaître la Palestine et qui vont reconnaître la Palestine comme État indépendant à part entière, le Canada n'a même pas le courage de reconnaître ça. Notre gouvernement a failli sur tous les plans, à sa responsabilité en tant que gouvernement souverain par rapport à ce qui se passe en Palestine. Donc, beaucoup de déception de la part de la population, oui.
All right, we'll go to Zoom for question. I see I have David Koch. The floor is yours. David?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, this is David Gordon Koch from the NB Media Co-op in Moncton, New Brunswick. Amid the ground invasion of Gaza City, I'm seeing reports of a telecoms blackout of phone and internet. And the NB Media Co-op was unable to reach Rizek Abdel Jawad, a photojournalist. We were supposed to interview yesterday. We just got word that he's okay, but obviously this is a very worrisome situation. Just any comment on the situation, or have you got any information about what's going on right now with this blackout and the ground invasion?
So as you can imagine, because of the blackout, the situation is there. It's been a couple of hours. There's no internet. A lot of people are having difficulties reaching none. Unfortunately, it's not a first time. We've seen what happened, and I'll go back to what we were talking before. It always tends to come together. There's a public, international leaders making a statement that they will do something, but then suddenly Israel thinks that they have the right to do worse, and there's the blackout. There's no communications. So, like always, something horrible that we would not have imagined is happening right now. We will know about it later on today or tomorrow, unfortunately, but this is what we've been living for the last 2 years, on and on and on. So going to the deception is the same thing. It's as if they know, because they come out and say some pat in the back comment about how they're doing something, while at the same time, horrible things kept happening at the same time. So right now, nobody knows. Our colleagues that has family on Gaza, they have not been able to reach anyone either. I also want to go back to what you mentioned, the complete apathy and lack of humanity from everyone, and even the media, because as you mentioned, journalists have been killed in an disproportional amount. No war has been this atrocious, has been recorded. And yet again, there's no empathy for them to their colleagues. We've seen it over and over again, and we all know clearly that's why, because they don't want anyone to go inside and show the atrocities that are happening. We have media reporters saying it from the planes, that they are not allowed to film on the airspace because of how horrific things are. So again, I go back to the beginning of the summer. It was the same thing when there was no aid coming in for over 30 days, that the government said that that was the limit. Next day, the government helped with some airdrop aid that actually ended up killing people. And then that was okay. The limit was pushed back. So this is an on and on pattern of like complicity, shame, apathy, and there's no victim for them. Like,
David, you got a follow-up?
No, thank you.
I just had a question. I know that Bayam El-Hashmi is not on the stage right now, but she's with Palestine Vivra. One of her comments yesterday in French was about legitimate resistance, that we're seeing a crackdown on the ability for Palestinians to have legitimate resistance. I know you can't speak on behalf of your colleague, but I'm wondering what that sort of entails, what she was getting at.
well, I cannot talk for her, but maybe it was more a thing that suddenly everyone has a right to defend themselves, or everyone has a right to protect things except Palestinians. So you're being bombarded, you're a woman pregnant with your child, and you're being bombarded, and if you run from the soldier, and then you are the criminal. So that's the resistance. It's just like going back to being humans, where like why are Palestinians considered bad? There's no benefit of the doubt. There's nothing. And then that's what we're saying. Like, why everyone has the right to defend themselves? Why Israel has the right to defend themselves? Why Ukraine has the right to defend themselves? Why the United States has the right to? Why Canada has the right to defend itself to the United States? That's why Carney got elected. But suddenly Palestinians, no, they don't have the right to defend themselves, even when they're being bombarded by an army and they are just civilians. That's, I guess, what she was saying. Again, I can only speak for myself.
Et aussi, madame, si je peux vous entendre peut-être en anglais si possible sur la flottille, vous partez à quelle date, d'où, combien de gens, combien de Canadiens?
So Thousands Madleens will sail next week. We are going to be in Italy, and we are going to sail from Italy. We are going to be at dozens of embarcations, bateaux, boats. Yeah, and we represent many countries. We are 10 countries represented in this flotilla, Thousands Madleens. There are French people, Greek people, Italian, Allemande, Suédois, Canadian. I don't remember the others, but we are many. We are going to be different person in those boats. Up to now, we are 4 Canadians that we are going to sail. I don't know when the others will go, but I will sail the 24th of September. And I don't know if you are aware of or not. Israel has announced that all the boats who bring humanitarian aid or medical aid to Gaza, we are terrorists. So I don't know what it will happen. We are not terrorists. We bring only medical material to persons who are suffering, and to people who are under genocide. So we will see.
This will conclude our first